I was stuck for 4.5 years. I tried everything with her. I got the diagnoses. I went down the path that I thought I was supposed to go down, and it wasn't helping. She was 10 years old, almost 11, and she was at a beginning first grade reading level. She's 13 years old now. She's reading at college level at 800 words per minute.
Krystle, it's great to have you here.
Hi, Charlie. It's nice to be here.
So I actually am doing this as one of the first interviews with a provider of sort of, I'll call them a la carte educational services. And we're seeing in the landscape of education that parents are having their needs met from a variety of different sources, some of them within the traditional school system, some of them outside. And there's just this whole new world of opportunities where previously some of the challenges that parents might have faced with their children, whether it's learning to read or struggling with a particular subject, they felt kind of confined to one system that was available. But when I heard your story and the story behind Vision Reading Academy, I kind of was stopped in my tracks, and I thought to myself, this is something that we need to get on the record as kind of a public service announcement. So I wanted to start off just hearing a little bit more about your story and how you came to found Vision Reading Academy in the first place.
Okay, yeah. So just like you were talking about how parents, they feel stuck, they feel lost, they feel like there's only one path for their child and they don't know where else to go. I took that path. I took that path with my daughter, and I was stuck for 4.5 years. I tried everything with her. I got the diagnoses. I got everything. I went down the path that I thought I was supposed to go down, and it wasn't helping. At this point, she was 10 years old, almost 11, and she was at a beginning first grade reading level. And it was horrendous, to say the least. I had pulled her out of public school just to see if I could help her more. And I kind of got a little bit more information about figuring out what was going on with her and the frustrations and where she was at. So that was very helpful. But it was like pulling teeth to get her to read, to get her to remember what she was reading, to get her to be able to sound out words from one line, and then those exact same words 5 lines down, and she couldn't recognize them. And it was very frustrating. And so I was to the point where I went, okay, well, I need to probably start making a list of trades for her that didn't have to do with reading, writing, spelling, or math, because she couldn't do those things, no matter how hard I would try. And I mean, I was doing school with her year round. So it wasn't like we were doing traditional public school where we would do it for so many weeks out of the year, so many months out of the year, and then you take the summer off, right? No, I was doing school with her every single day other than Saturday. Sometimes we would even do it on Saturday, but we would take Sunday off, and that's it. And nothing. I was not progressing with her at all. I did all of the Orton-Gillingham programs for dyslexia, and nothing was working. So I went through and was going to start doing a list of trades that she could learn to be able to help her succeed in life, so that as an adult, she could still go out into the world and succeed. And then I went, you know what? That's not good enough. That is not good enough. I feel like I'm giving up on my daughter at that point. And so then I started doing research. I started talking to different experts. I started talking to people that kind of let me know that convergence insufficiency is a thing. And then I started doing more research on my own and finding out that convergence insufficiency was something that was discovered clear back in the 1980s. This has been around. People have known about it, but it hasn't been something that's been main stage. And so people don't really understand it. They don't know about it. And so then the research started coming. I started doing different things with her, me being more of being a research scientist and working with the human body and knowing how the human body works. I kind of took that into play and worked with different specialists like medical massage therapists and reading scientists, and from there developed exercises, developed this reading program that I worked with her. She was essentially my guinea pig. And I said, okay, well, let's try this with her. Okay, well, let's try this with her. And I had a mentor at the time that he was kind of going, okay, well, let's do this with her. Let's try this. Let's do this. And there were things that I implemented that he even went, why? How are you getting her to progress so quickly? What are you doing? And I was like, well, I'm working on this, this, and this with her. And he's like, oh, that's amazing. So with that, that's kind of just how it grew. It was born out of the desperation of me trying to help my own child. And in that, she's 13 years old now. She's reading at college level at 800 words per minute, over 800 words per minute. She can read a 600-page book in 2 days. And that's with doing her schoolwork and hanging out with friends and all other things. So she's not just sitting there with the book in front of her face the entire time either. She reads it tremendously fast.
This is obviously not just an isolated case, or this struggle is shared by who knows how many thousands of parents who have to question, is my child just kind of a little bit behind? Will they catch up? Will they sort of grow out of their reading struggles? And in some cases, that might happen. That might happen naturally. And in other cases, you mentioned the Orton Gillingham. What's that?
Or Orton Gillingham. They're
Or
basically the mainstream program for dyslexia. So there's all sorts of curriculums that are founded off of the Orton Gillingham based program to follow this program in order to help kids with it's a true cognitive dyslexia, right? It's to help them
right.
learn to read when they have a true cognitive dyslexia. However, when they don't, and it's an ocular motor issue, they're stuck at a standstill because they only can get so far within, and they're like, okay, well, I guess this is it. I guess
Right.
this is all they can get, when a lot of times it's more because it's an ocular motor issue instead of a cognitive issue.
Yeah. So I think it's beautiful that on the one hand, we've had an evolution in recent years where people are waking up to the idea that there's not a one size fits all reading method. And if you have, like you're saying, cognitive dyslexia, there are methods, and maybe schools are getting better at identifying sort of who might fit into that category. And some people might find that the Orton Gillingham method is exactly what they need to get their child unstuck. But there is some fraction who will go into those programs and still won't have the success. And you were in that category. And it was only because of your background as a detective and a researcher, your persistence, that led you to kind of uncover. I'm picturing you with like a stack of dusty library books, but I'm guessing you probably found the research online. And you mentioned this other term, convergence insufficiency, which I think is really what your whole program is based around, helping students, children overcome. So maybe you can talk a little bit more about just what that is as a sort of ocular motor issue, as opposed to a cognitive one, like the traditional dyslexia that people know of.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, let's talk about why it is missed so often, right? So why it gets diagnosed as dyslexia. And the reason for that is because unless you go in and have a neurological dyslexic test done, right? You're having it tested through a reading test. So there is no differentiation between it being an ocular issue versus a cognitive issue, because you're doing it through a reading test. So you're having to use your eyes. And that's where the problem lies. And so because of that, a lot of schools, they don't know the difference. They don't know that there is a difference, right? And so I'm actually having different school districts reaching out to me going, how can we get you into our schools to start getting this so that we can get these students assessed and know exactly what's happening? So that's kind of where we go from there. So then when I go into that and I talk to them about what the difference is between convergence insufficiency and cognitive dyslexia, we talk about how the eyes have to be working together. There are 14 different muscles that control the eyes. And if we don't have even one of those muscles that is functioning properly, it makes it so that that eye does not work. And we need to make sure that the eyes are converging at one singular gaze point. And if they're not converging at one singular gaze point, then the eyes, one, they have to work together harder, which makes it so that a lot of times the kids have comprehension issues, and they will work so hard to try and read something, but they've expended so much energy to read that one word or that one phrase
Hmm.
that they forget completely about what they read because that energy went to essentially just their eyes trying to read the letters and words that are on the page. So that's where the difference comes in, where we want to make sure that we're working with the eyes and we're looking at the eyes. And then from there, we do work with brain integration. We do make sure that the brain is integrated properly and that the brain is integrated properly, both with the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere, as well as integrated with the entire body as a whole and the eyes. So it's a whole well-rounded process that we work with, but we start with that convergence insufficiency and make sure that that's what the child has. That's why we do free assessments, is we want to make sure that they're not just coming into the program and signing up and being like, oh, hey, I think my kid has an issue. Let's sign them up for reading tutoring, right? No, we are more of a complex program than that. We want to make sure that what they truly have that's going on is something that with their eyes.
Is there any data on the prevalence of this in the general population compared to, say, cognitive dyslexia, or do you have an estimate of how many children as a percentage or might be struggling with this without knowing it?
I think it's very high. So right now it's about 1 in 4 is the statistic of dyslexia, right? So
Hmm.
if we go off of that, so 25% of children have dyslexia is most recent statistic out there for dyslexia. However, if we then bring in how many students have come into our program, which is we're in the hundreds, and they've been previously diagnosed with dyslexia, them truly having dyslexia, 100% of the time they have not. They have had an ocular motor issue. So
Wow.
I,
And I guess there might be a bit of the people that are coming to you are the ones who maybe didn't have success with the other methods, but it's still that's an astounding rate that you're finding this in almost. And what can you give a overview of what the assessment, how you kind of pick that apart, or how you identify that this is in fact the problem?
yeah, absolutely. It's super easy. The assessment takes, I mean, sometimes the assessment takes no longer than 5 minutes. All
Hmm.
as I need to do is I have the mom, it's all over Zoom. So it's not in person or anything like that. It's all over Zoom. And all as I'm doing is I'm having the mom move like a pencil or a pen in certain directions, because all I'm looking for is I'm looking for each one of those different muscles and watching to see how those muscles are controlling the eyes and how they're controlling them together and how they're controlling and how they're working separately. And I can see that very quickly if once that student has that issue, it's very, very, you can see it very well.
Right.
It's not something that you're like, oh, well, maybe. No, it's very black and white. It's
Hmm.
there or it's not there. And so it's almost stupidly easy to be able
Hmm.
to see this, but it's something that, because it's not something that has been known is a thing, nobody knows to look for it. And there's only a
Right.
very select few amount of people out there that go that this is an issue and this needs to be fixed. And so, yeah, there's help out there and people are seeking that kind of help to try and help with like the vision therapy, right? You hear the vision therapy out there. But then there's beyond that, the vision therapy, when they're not wanting to use glasses or anything else like that, they've got to have some kind of help there. And that's where we come into play, where we're helping with essentially physical therapy exercises for the eyes. And we're helping with reading exercises to get them so that they're training the eyes at that singular gaze, training their eyes at that singular gaze point and working with that convergence to make sure the eyes are converging together.
So the solution then is it's like I said, it's a workout regimen for your eyes. It's exercises, and are parents equipped to take these lessons and work them with their children, or are the children typically coming in and working with the coach for the duration of the exercises? How does it break down in terms of what they're doing with you and your team versus what they kind of take away as homework?
Right. So that's a good question. When they come and they onboard onto the program, we assign them to a coach one-on-one, because we want to make sure that that coach is watching them and making sure that they are progressing properly throughout the program. We have where they start out with base exercises, right? We want, just like you're not going to go to the gym and you're not going to pick up a 110 pound weight and try and curl that right off the bat, right? Like you've got to work your way up to it. It's that same type of thing. So we start them off with base exercises, and those base exercises start getting the eyes used to going, oh, this is how I'm supposed to work. These are how my muscles are supposed to be working together and functioning. And then as we continue to waken those muscles up and we start growing them, then we start adding on more exercises. So how we have the program set up is the students will meet with a certified coach twice a week for 30 minutes is all, because we don't want to tire out their eyes. We don't want to get them overstimulated, overfrustrated. We want to make sure that we're growing them, but that we're not pushing them to the level of frustration every single time. So it's 30 minutes twice a week. And then every 3 weeks for the first 12 weeks, an assessor will pop in and will assess their eyes to see how that growth is happening with those muscles and see. And it's very clear when you see the students that they're doing their eye exercises, because there is monumental changes that happen with their eyes. Not only that you can see personally with how their eyes move, but you will also see the difference in the reading program side of it, where their ability to actually read and their frustration level with reading completely changes. Reading becomes easier for them. Their confidence level, they get this glow in them. They get this brightness in their eyes, because they're finally being able to accomplish something and achieve something that they thought that they never were going to be able to do.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of an analogy for people who, as is the case for most people who don't have this problem, and they maybe like going to a movie theater, a 3D movie, and you put on those glasses, but they're just, and it's the two images, or maybe it's like someone who's not given the glasses and they go in and they're trying to follow the 3D movie, but 2 minutes in, they're feeling nauseous and they're not listening to the dialogue as closely. And halfway in, they're, ready to just completely throw it out. Even if everyone with the glasses on is like, this is amazing. What's also striking me is that for I don't know, most of human history, pre-modern times, I don't think that the average person was even required to read for their job. Even, farmers in the 18th century still pretty much didn't have to read, and not nearly the volume that's demanded of a typical knowledge worker in today's economy. And it's interesting to me when you think about the construction of the eyes, how maybe this would have, for most of human history, you could have gotten along fine, even not having this diagnosis or the treatment for it. But in the world that we live in now, where not only printed word, but screens are such a big part, do you think that there could be any sense in which screens or the prevalence of kind of the written word is creating the insufficiency in the first place? Or is there does the literature speak to that at all, kind of where this came from? Or do you think it's just something that has always been there? It's just that now we're starting to discover it.
I do believe this is my theory, because I have not found any actual published research, which, I mean, that's because I am a research scientist, right? I want to get to the point where I have enough data that's gathered that I will publish my own research. So eventually I'll get there. But with my own theory, I do believe it is more prevalent now. And I think that the reason why it is more prevalent now is because we have screens here that are right close up. They're right in front of us. We have kids that they're watching TV, they're watching things on mom and dad's phone, and it's right here in front of them, maybe 5 inches away from their face, right? And so what happens there is, and you can even do this experiment, and you can actually just watch, even when you are watching a TV screen and it is across the room, you can watch somebody, you can watch their eyes, and their eyes will make slight movements like this. There isn't a lot of movement that happens with the eyes. And so because of that, I believe that it's essentially paralyzing these muscles. And they're atrophying, because there isn't that workout, there isn't that movement of the eyes like there has been in the past, where the majority of entertainment for children was being outside and playing, and they're running around and they're watching balls flying and they're catching balls, and they're having to move their eyes, and they're having to see long distance and close distance, and they're having to utilize their eyes essentially all day long every day. Versus now we've got screens in our school systems. We've got screens the minute that we come home, and we're put on screens. The kids are doing their homework on screens. They're put in front and playing games, video games, Minecraft, all of these games
Right.
that are essentially helping the kids with coding and everything else. But I believe it is a huge detriment to their actual function of their eyes as a whole. But again, that's my belief. I don't have enough research out there yet to prove that. But just from what I've seen, I believe that it is very much more common than it was even years ago. And for like my students, their parents, like I do have where the parents would be like, oh yeah, I was diagnosed with dyslexia as a child and I struggled with reading my entire life and I still struggle with reading. I'll look at a menu, and the only thing that I'll do when I order is I look for the pictures because it's too difficult for me to actually read the words. And so it was something that was still an issue back years and years ago. However, it wasn't as prominent as it is now because there wasn't that access to the screens and there wasn't the access to all of the mainstream technology that we have now.
Right. One of my personal axes to grind has to do with the way that we diagnose and treat myopia. I'm nearsighted, myopic. Myopic is kind of the old-fashioned term, or maybe it's the official term. I don't know. But when I was first diagnosed by an algebra teacher, a geometry teacher in high school, who noticed that I was kind of squinting to see the whiteboard when I was sitting in the back of the classroom, and she suggested that I get a vision test. And I went in, and of course they say, yeah, you gave me the measurement, you would benefit from contact lenses and glasses. And I didn't have any reason to question that. And I went straight into it. And I remember maybe initially when I would first put the contact lenses in or first put on the glasses, one, it was amazing to see the world clearly in a way that I hadn't in a long time. But I didn't take those glasses or the contact lenses off when I was reading things up close or looking at screens. And I noticed that I would get kind of nauseous at first when I did that because it was overcorrecting for what I needed. I could see up close. I could see a screen at that time. I could read a book without having glasses. But in the course of kind of over-focusing, there is a theory, and I forget the name of it right now, but I later discovered that there is this tendency of the eye muscles to lock in and lock up at that in that kind of over-focused mode. They're unable to relax to get into the position to see long distances. So I follow a guy named Jake Steiner who kind of offers some exercises for being able to, again, like focus on the distance. And I have improved a couple of diopters in my vision since discovering this. And I also got a separate pair of glasses that I can use for the computer screen, which is a lower grade of prescription. It's not as intense. But I think that we are coming to grips with all these different ways that the modern world seems to be kind of at odds with our biology. And this would seem to be another example of that. When it comes to this idea of just sort of, what did I want to say? This will be a little thing that I probably edit down. Oh yeah, I did want to ask you about this idea, and we alluded to it earlier, but parents who are just waiting for their child to catch up. I think we also know that even apart from any kind of learning disability or muscular issue, that children do develop at different rates, and someone might not learn to read until they're 6 or 7, but then suddenly catch up. How would you say, if a parent is noticing that their child just sort of has an aversion to learning to read when they're maybe 5 or 6 or 7, when their peers are beginning to read, how do you know when it might just be that child, for whatever reason, isn't leaning into it and they're going to catch up, versus someone who's being held back by convergence insufficiency?
So a lot of times you'll notice things like they'll read the small words and they'll be able to see those words. And then when they start getting into the bigger words, 5, 6, 7 letter words, they're unable to really chunk those words out. And when they do, they'll chunk it out. But then, like I was talking about before, then 3 lines down, It'll be the same word, and they won't be able to recognize that that is the same word because it looks completely different for them, because how their eyes focused on the word before will be different how they focus on the word the second time around. And so they'll look at that and it's completely foreign to them. And then they don't have that comprehension ability to then be able to go back up and be like, oh yeah, I've already read this word before, because they do not remember it. They have zero recollection of reading that word prior. So those are a lot of common signs. There will be where the kids will start guessing at like endings, the suffixes of words, or they'll start guessing at words in general. Like it'll be made and they'll say make, right? Because they'll see the MA part and they'll know that MA, okay, well, let's say it's make, right? So there's a lot of those things that you'll see that the kids, that they will develop crutches. And the reason why that they're developing those crutches is because it's a safety net for them, because they're going, okay, well, I'm trying to I've got to read as well as my peers are, or I've got to appease mom or dad because they're saying that, this is frustrating and they're not getting it and I'm not getting it. So I'm gonna create my own crutches. And I say that because, and I don't want to make it sound like that I want the parent to feel guilty, because that's not what it is. Our bodies are amazing. Our brains are amazing to be able to adapt for survival. Right. And so that's what these children are doing. So when you start seeing those little signs, it means that the kid is struggling in their ability to try and work through how to read. It's not necessarily that they're not wanting to, but then there's the frustration that comes in. And so they're going, oh, well, they're just not ready to read yet. They'll catch up. Right. No, it's because there's a cry for help there, but nobody knows to recognize that that's a cry for help. And they just kind of, okay, well, we'll stop for now. We'll start in the spring and see if they're ready to do it then. And nope, they're not ready then. Then 7 comes, then 8 comes, 9 comes. Okay, well, maybe they'll be ready by the time they're 12, right? And so then at that point, the self-esteem is broken and their confidence is broken, and they come to us and they're just this empty shell of a child because they're going, I'm stupid and dumb and not good enough, when they truly are. And it's simply because the little tiny things that they tried to do to survive in the beginning, it wasn't enough to keep them going. It didn't help them in the long run. But mom didn't know that, teacher didn't know that. They didn't understand that those were crutches, cries for help.
Before we started recording, we were talking about some of the vocabulary and the discourse around students with special needs, that language, and also just the idea of labeling and diagnosis in cases where we wouldn't diagnose or when we do diagnose people as being nearsighted, but it's not a label that people usually identify with. Like I don't think about that when I think about Charlie Dice. I'm not really thinking about like Charlie Dice nearsighted, these things. What would you say? What is the value of a diagnosis, and how do you distinguish that from a label in the case of, a special needs student, that kind of thing?
Okay. So as far as a value of a diagnosis in what we do in our program, I don't think it's beneficial at all. I don't believe it's helpful. I think that it hinders the child more than it helps them, because they go through the rest of their life going, I'm this way. I'm not good enough because Bobby doesn't have that same label, right? So I'm not going to amount to what Bobby can do because I'm this way. Whereas this is something that can very much be fixed and completely reversed. And like I was saying when we were talking before, it's cliche for me to say. I feel like it's cliche, but at the same time, it's so true that we take these kids and we change their lives. We change their futures completely. They go from being this broken shell of a child to a child that can achieve and do anything they want to. We have students that they would come to us and say, no, I don't want to go to college. Why would I want to go to college and pay somebody to torture me? That was what one of my students said. And I'm like, fair enough, touche. Like, I wouldn't want that either. Now she's in college. And it was simply because all she needed was she needed her eyes to work properly in order for things to be easy for her, her junior and senior year of high school were a complete breeze for her. So different compared to anything that she has ever done in any of her. So we actually just had a student this last week reach out to me that they went to their eye doctor just to see if her prescription had changed, if her eyes had changed, if anything had changed. And the eye doctor asked the mom, "What are you doing?" Her eyes have changed so much. She needs a new prescription. It's a very, very low prescription now. And the mom said, we're doing this reading program with her. We're doing this eye therapy program with her. And the doctor went, "This is incredible. I need her number because I'm going to start sending patients to her, because this is something that everybody needs to know, that there is help to strengthen their eyes." So even a little side note that we're supposed to be helping kids with their vision, with helping with reading and math and spelling and, all of those, helping with school subjects. We're actually helping their actual eyesight as well with the exercises that we have developed. So it's pretty huge. Now, we don't guarantee that there's going to be that drop in the diopters with prescriptions and everything else, but it is something that is almost a happy coincidence that we're seeing results with as well.
Well, credit to that optometrist or that eye doctor who was wanting to send people your way. I feel like I have a bit of a not skepticism, but I have a sense that the industry or the medical guild to some extent has created a whole industry for themselves around selling glasses and prescriptions where you're always going back and getting the stronger prescription. I wonder how widely known this is, that this is myopia is a reversible condition. And the problem is that there's not as much money in sometimes healing the disorder as there is in treating it in perpetuity. But we'll save my
1,000%.
we'll save my conspiracy theories for a separate conversation.
Yep, I agree. If you follow the money, Charlie, you'll find it. But that's why we don't want to create revolving doors and revolving customers with us. It's a one and done deal. We want them to come back to us to tell us their successes, that they're in college, that they have amazing careers now, that they're doing amazing things with their life. That's what we want to have them come back to, not "I need your help."
Awesome. So her junior and senior year of college were a breeze.
Yes, they were a breeze, and now she is in college, and she's following her dreams that she never knew were possible, and it all was because she just needed help with her eyes. As simple as that. But what changed the trajectory of her mind and her schooling and thinking that she wasn't good enough was because she was diagnosed with dyslexia. And so she just said, "I wasn't good enough. I can't do it. I can't do it." And so that's why I don't believe in diagnoses as far as our programs go. Now, I do believe that diagnoses can be helpful to be able to get the help that a child needs, right? So I'm not completely against diagnoses. However, I think that they need to be dialed back a little bit, and that they need to be given with caution more than anything else, because that label will be something that will be carried on with that child for the rest of their life. And so it's one of those that you want to make sure 100% certain. And I understand that the world that we live in, a lot of times it's been around for so long. So that's what people think that's what they need. Just like it was for my daughter. Like I thought that I needed to go down that route, right, to see if she was dyslexic, if she had ADHD, had all of those diagnoses, right? And she sure enough got those diagnoses. However, it turned out to be that it was something completely different, and it was her eyes. Her eyes just needed fixed. So just like you saying that, yeah, you're not walking around saying, "Well, I'm not good enough because I have myopia," right? It's more than that. That's a diagnosis that's going to help you, right? Versus sometimes it's more of a hindrance and a problem to somebody than it is an actual help. And that's my belief. And so we don't, when a child comes to us, we say, "You are perfectly fine. You are brilliantly smart. You are amazing. And you can achieve anything that you want to achieve. So let's start here. Let's have you commit to this program. Let's have you do these exercises. Let's have you work with this amazing coach. And you're going to see changes, and you're going to see changes quickly. that you'll be here probably for 6+ months, because we want to make sure that we create that muscle memory in your eyes so that your
Mhm.
eyes are not going to regress, that those muscles won't regress, and that they will stick around and you'll have that same muscle strength for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I think it's a very common story among the families in open ed that a certain curriculum's not working for them, and then they try a different curriculum and something clicks. But here we're talking about something that's even one level deeper. It's not just about having choice of curriculum, but you also do need to understand the underlying, in this case, it's the biology. And if you're barking up the wrong tree and just trying to sort of switch out a different reading curriculum with no luck, with no results, then this is something that I think you might want to try and check out. Krystle, how can people hear, or how can people learn more? Where do they go? You mentioned that it's on Zoom, so I assume that this is available to anyone anywhere in the country.
Yes, we help students all over the world. We're helping as many as we can. And to find us, you can go to visionreadingacademy.com, and all of the information is there to be able to learn more. We've got an information page. We've got an AI bot that is actually pretty nifty and pretty smart, that has learned quite a bit of what we do and information that I put in there for it. So you can ask it all sorts of questions. You can schedule a time to meet with us if you want to just meet and ask more questions, or if you want to get your child assessed because you're like, hey, yeah, it sounds like that this is something that my child needs. That, yeah, they're guessing at words. Yeah, they're context filling. They're putting words in there that aren't there. Yeah, they're struggling. They're reading a lot slower than they should be. They can't comprehend things. All of those things, then you are welcome to schedule an assessment, or if you have more questions, you can email us. Our email's there. There's a contact us page. You can fill out that contact form and be able to email us and talk more with us. We're all there. You just have to reach out, and we are more than willing to help you and get what you need.
And you'll know you're in the right place if you see this adorable little panda bear with the reading glasses on. Well, Krystle, this has been awesome. I'm glad to learn a little bit more about convergence insufficiency, and I will definitely send people your way as I encounter, anyone that might be having struggles teaching their child to read, or if the child is resisting it. Everyone should have the gift of the love of reading, and all the benefits that come with that in life. And I am optimistic that we can get this message out to a lot more people and kind of ride this wave of parents realizing that there's no one size fits all way of educating, and we have to broaden our perspective a little bit, both in the figurative sense, but also even in the literal sense. I know after this, I'm going to get outside and just relax my eyes and take a view off into the distance. So thanks again for taking the time today. And I hope people will go check out Vision Reading Academy. Stay tuned for more from the OpenEd podcast. Thanks, Krystle.
Thanks, Charlie.